What would you do if a billionaire's baby screamed uncontrollably on a crowded plane and no one could stop it? Passengers grew angry, the mother was helpless, and the flight felt doomed, until a poor black teenager stepped in. What happened next shocked everyone on board and changed lives forever. Hey friends, welcome back to BrainFuel, the channel where real-life inspired stories touch your heart and spark your mind. If you love powerful stories about kindness, hope, and unexpected heroes, then hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. Now, let's dive into today's story. The sound came suddenly, sharp, piercing, and relentless. A baby's cry. It wasn't the soft whimper of a child asking for attention. No. This was a full-throated wail that echoed to the narrow cabin of Flight 227 like an alarm no one could turn off. Heads turned. Some passengers flinched. Others let out loud sighs. The atmosphere of quiet conversation, headphones, and rustling magazines shattered within seconds. At the center of it all sat Vanessa Carter, billionaire, CEO, philanthropist, a woman who had been on the cover of Forbes more times than she could count. Yet, right now, none of her power or wealth mattered. What mattered was a tiny baby in her arms. Her daughter, Amelia, screaming as if the world itself had wronged her. Vanessa bounced her gently, her diamond bracelet catching the overhead light. She whispered, "Shoo, sweetheart, it's okay. Mommy's here." Her voice was tender, desperate even, but Amelia's cries only grew louder. The pressure in the cabin had nothing to do with altitude. It was tension, mounting by the second. A man 2 rows ahead groaned loudly and turned in his seat. "Can't she do something?" he muttered, not quietly enough. His wife nudged him, but her annoyed glance said the same thing. Behind Vanessa, a young woman pulled out her phone and slipped in earbuds, rolling her eyes. A flight attendant approached with a sympathetic smile. "Ms. Carter, do you need anything? Warm milk? A blanket?" "I've tried," Vanessa whispered, her face pale. "Nothing is working." Her mind raced. She had boardrooms full of executives who hung on her every word, journalists who quoted her as if she were untouchable. But here, in the middle of a crowded airplane, she was just a mother who couldn't sue her own child. Her heart pounded as Amelia's cries echoed louder, bouncing off every wall, filling every ear. The people in first class, accustomed to comfort, shifted uncomfortably. Some glared at her. Others buried their faces in pillows, as if hiding could make the sound disappear. Vanessa fought back tears. She had promised herself she would never break down in public, but Amelia's cries clawed at her nerves. She rocked her daughter harder, whispering lullabies, even humming the tune that usually calmed her at home. Nothing. The baby arched her back, her tiny fists waving in protest, her face red and wet with tears. Vanessa kissed her forehead, whispering desperately, "Please, Amelia, please, Mommy needs you to stop." But babies don't respond to desperation. They don't understand pride, reputation, or status. They only understand comfort and need. And Amelia wasn't finding either. The minutes dragged. Each second felt like an eternity. Sweat collected on Vanessa's temples, though the air conditioning hummed steadily. She adjusted the blanket, loosened Amelia's onesie, checked her diaper. She had done it all before the flight. Nothing was wrong, and yet everything was wrong. She closed her eyes, fighting the sting of humiliation. Billionaire or not, she was powerless. And in the cruel silence between each cry, she could hear the passengers murmuring, "This is unbearable. Some people just shouldn't travel with infants. Why don't they have rules about this?" The words cut deeper than they should have. Vanessa had faced critics before, shareholders, competitors, the press, but this was different. She wasn't being judged for her business decisions. She was being judged as a mother, and that hurt more than anything. She pressed Amelia close to her chest, covering her daughter's ears as if shielding her from the world's harshness. But the crying went on, long and shrill. Vanessa's throat tightened. She could almost feel the tears rising, threatening to betray her in front of strangers. For the first time in years, she whispered words she had never admitted out loud. "I don't know what to do." And in that moment, across the aisle, a pair of eyes watched. 17-year-old Marcus sat quietly, clutching the strap of his worn-out backpack, resting on his lap. He was tall but slouched in his seat, as if trying not to be noticed. His t-shirt was faded, his sneakers scuffed, his whole appearance ordinary. But his gaze wasn't ordinary. It was gentle, understanding. He had been watching since the cries began, not with annoyance like the others, but with recognition. He knew that sound. He knew that helplessness. It took him back to nights in his small apartment when his little sister wouldn't stop crying, and their mother was too tired after her third shift to even lift her head. Marcus had been the one to hold her, sway her, hum softly until her eyelids fluttered shut. He remembered those nights clearly, the weight of his baby sister in his arms, the desperation to make her feel safe. Now, sitting here on the plane, he felt that same instinct stirring inside him. He wanted to help, but doubt crept in. What if the woman rejected him? She was no ordinary passenger. He recognized her from the news. Vanessa Carter, billionaire, untouchable, sitting just a few feet away from him. Why would someone like her trust him, a kid from the city who barely scraped enough money together for this ticket? He looked down at his hands, flexing his fingers nervously. The cries continued, sharp and endless. He could see the exhaustion in Vanessa's eyes, the way her shoulders slumped as though the weight of the world pressed on them. Marcus took a deep breath. He had learned one thing from growing up the way he did. When someone is hurting, you don't stand by and watch. You step in, no matter who they are. He straightened in his seat. His heart thumped hard in his chest, but he didn't look away. Instead, he rose slowly, standing up as other passengers glanced at him curiously. Vanessa looked up, startled, her face streaked with frustration and fatigue. Marcus hesitated only for a moment before saying softly, "Excuse me, ma'am, would you like me to try?" Marcus's words seemed to hang in the air longer than they should have. "Would you like me to try?" The murmurs of annoyed passengers quieted for a moment, as though everyone wanted to hear how Vanessa would respond. A teenager offering to calm a billionaire's child wasn't exactly a scene anyone expected. Vanessa blinked in disbelief, her mind caught between exhaustion and caution. Her daughter was finally asleep in her arms just last night. Why couldn't she do the same today? And now, a stranger, a boy who couldn't have been more than 17, was standing over her, offering to do what she, with all her experience and resources, could not. Her instinct screamed to say no. She was protective, fiercely protective, especially after losing so much of her privacy to the media. What if someone filmed this moment? What if tomorrow's headline read, "Billionaire mother hands baby to teen stranger on flight"? She could already imagine the cruel comments, the judgments. But then her eyes met his. There was no mockery in Marcus's gaze, no impatience like the others. Just a quiet, genuine kindness. The kind of look that reminded her of someone who had been there before. She clutched Amelia tighter, still hesitating. I don't know if that's a good idea," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of exhaustion. Marcus shifted nervously, his hands fidgeting at his sides. "I understand," he said quickly, his voice low and respectful. I've taken care of my little sister since she was a baby. Sometimes babies need a different rhythm. Sometimes they calm down with someone new." He stopped himself, suddenly aware of how presumptuous that might have sounded. Who was he to give advice to a billionaire mother? Vanessa studied him, torn. Her instincts as a mother battled with her desperation as a human being. She was exhausted, humiliated. Every second Amelia cried. It felt like another nail in her composure. And yet, hand her child to a stranger? That was unthinkable. A man across the aisle scoffed. "For heaven's sake, lady, just let him try. Anything's better than this noise." Others nodded, some muttering in agreement. The pressure mounted, pressing it on Vanessa like a spotlight she couldn't escape. Amelia let out another shrill cry, her little body trembling with frustration. Vanessa's arms ached from holding her so tightly, from bouncing her endlessly without success. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. She turned back to Marcus. He didn't look annoyed or condescending or desperate for attention. He just looked willing. For the first time in a long time, Vanessa felt something unusual, humility. Maybe she didn't have to carry the weight alone. Not in this moment. "Please, just for a moment," she said finally, her voice barely audible, as though she feared the decision itself. Marcus's heart thumped so loudly he thought others might hear it. Carefully, slowly, he reached out his arms, the way an older brother would when holding his baby sibling. Vanessa hesitated again, instinctively drawing Amelia closer. Then, with a trembling breath, she loosened her grip and placed her daughter into Marcus's arms. The baby wailed harder at first, her face scrunched, fists flailing. Some passengers groaned in frustration, already preparing for disappointment. A woman muttered, "This won't work." But Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't roll his eyes or rush. He adjusted his hold gently, supporting Amelia's head with one hand, cradling her body with the other. His movements were confident, practiced, the way only someone who had truly spent countless nights soothing a child could manage. He began to sway slowly, side to side, not hurried or mechanical, but with a rhythm that felt natural, almost like a dance. At the same time, he started to hum softly, a low, steady tune that seemed to blend with the hum of the airplane's engines. It wasn't a song anyone recognized. It wasn't a lullaby from a music box or a radio. It was the kind of tune a big brother makes up in the quiet hours of the night, something personal and instinctive. At first, Amelia fought it. She arched her back, her little fists shaking. But Marcus didn't stop. He kept swaying, kept humming, his voice steady, unshaken by the glares and murmurs around him. Vanessa watched with her breath caught in her chest. Every instinct told her to grab her daughter back. And yet, there was something about the way this boy held Amelia. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't forced. It was as though he'd been carrying babies his whole life. The passengers, restless and annoyed, began to quiet down. A few leaned forward, curious. The crying still echoed, but there was something different in the air. Patience. Hope. A man in the back whispered, "Give it a minute." Vanessa's heart ached with both fear and gratitude. This boy, this stranger, was doing what she could not. She wasn't sure if she should feel relieved or ashamed. She looked at Marcus again. His expression was calm, focused, and tender. He didn't look like a boy anymore. He looked like someone who had carried responsibility far beyond his years. And then, slowly, the cries began to soften. Amelia's wails broke into little hiccups. Her fists loosened. Her eyes fluttered. Marcus continued his gentle sway, humming with the patience of someone who knew this was more than just about stopping a cry. It was about making the baby feel safe. Vanessa covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes stinging. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. The passengers stared, hushed now, watching this boy perform a small miracle before their eyes. The cabin that once felt suffocating with sound now felt suspended in a fragile, unexpected silence. And in that silence, Vanessa realized something she hadn't expected to admit. Sometimes, help comes from the most unlikely places. At first, the sound of Amelia's crying still pierced the air. Her small body trembled in Marcus's arms, her face red and wet, her tiny lungs working with every ounce of strength. Some passengers groaned again, already shaking their heads as if to say, "See, it's hopeless." But Marcus didn't let the frustration of others shake him. He didn't look embarrassed or rushed. He simply adjusted his grip, rocking the baby with a rhythm that seemed second nature. His voice was low, a gentle hum blending with the deep drone of the airplane's engines. It wasn't loud, wasn't fancy, just steady. He swayed side to side, slowly and calmly, his movements unhurried. He had learned long ago that babies could sense tension, that they mirrored the energy around them. If he panicked, the baby would too. So instead, he became calm itself, rock solid, steady, safe. Vanessa watched in silence, her breath trapped in her chest. Her heart pounded, as if she were watching some fragile magic trick that could vanish at any moment. "Please, let this work," she thought desperately. And then it happened. Amelia's cries, one so sharp they rattled the cabin walls, softened into small hiccups. Her fists, which had been tightly clenched in protest, loosened. Her little body relaxed against Marcus's chest, her cheek pressing into the fabric of his faded T-shirt. The wailing turned into soft whimpers, then, astonishingly, into silence. The silence was deafening, not because it was empty, but because it was filled with awe. The passengers, who had spent nearly an hour rolling their eyes, muttering complaints, and glaring daggers, now froze in disbelief. A woman in the front row tilted her head, her jaw dropping slightly. A businessman who had been grumbling earlier blinked in surprise, muttering under his breath, "No way." Even the flight attendants, who had been hovering nearby with backup plans, bottles, blankets, soothing words, paused mid-step. They exchanged looks of wonder. It wasn't their efforts, or even the mother's, that had worked. It was this boy, this teenager who had simply stepped up without hesitation. Marcus didn't smile triumphantly or bask in the attention. He wasn't even thinking about the people watching him. His entire focus was on the baby in his arms. He continued to sway gently, humming the tune as though Amelia were the only soul in the world. His movement slowed but never stopped, giving her the steady rhythm she had been craving all along. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears she couldn't hold back anymore. For nearly an hour, she had fought against judgment, embarrassment, and her own feelings of failure as a mother. She had tried everything, pouring every ounce of herself into calming Amelia. But this boy, the stranger, had done what she could not. She covered her mouth with her hand, her diamond ring catching the overhead light, but no amount of wealth or power could shield her from the emotion swelling inside her chest. Relief, gratitude, and humility all crashed into her at once. Passengers began whispering. Their tones transformed from annoyance to admiration. Unbelievable. Did you see that? The baby just stopped crying. That boy has a gift. Even those who had been the loudest complainers earlier now leaned forward, watching with softened eyes. Some smiled. Others shook their heads in amazement. It was as if the entire cabin had shifted from a place of tension and frustration to one of awe and quiet respect. Marcus looked down at Amelia. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy with sleep. He smiled faintly, his hum fading into a low murmur. "There you go, little one," he whispered, so soft only she could hear. "You're safe now." The way he held her was not the way of someone inexperienced. It was practiced, instinctive. He cradled her head with steady hands, his arms supporting her body with the ease of someone who had done it countless times. The tenderness in his movements told a story of late nights rocking his baby sister, of responsibility far beyond his years, of love that had taught him patience. Vanessa's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. Her throat was too tight with emotion. She had built her empire on control of situations, of people, of outcomes. Yet here, in this small, humbling moment, she had lost all control and witnessed a boy restore peace with nothing more than kindness and instinct. The baby gave a soft sigh, her breathing deepening as she slipped into the comfort of sleep. Marcus slowed his sway, but didn't stop completely. He knew too well the trick. Babies often startle awake if the rhythm stopped too suddenly. So he kept going, his patience unwavering. The hush in the cabin felt sacred, as if no one dared to break it. A flight attendant leaned in and whispered to Vanessa, "Your daughter looks so peaceful now." Vanessa could only nod, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She reached out her arms, her hands trembling as Marcus gently shifted Amelia back to her. He moved slowly, deliberately, ensuring the baby remained undisturbed. When Amelia was once again in her mother's embrace, she didn't stir. Her tiny chest rose and fell softly, her face calm and serene. Vanessa clutched her daughter tightly, holding her close as tears dripped onto the baby's blanket. She looked up at Marcus, her lips trembling. How did you do that?" Marcus lowered his eyes shyly, his voice quiet. "It's nothing special. I just learned how to be patient. Babies like rhythm, warmth, and calm. They feel it when you're steady. That's all." To him, it was simple, but to Vanessa and everyone who had witnessed the moment, it was nothing short of miraculous. For the first time on that flight, Vanessa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Humility so sharp it softened her heart. She, a billionaire who had solved the world's toughest business problems, had been undone by a crying child. Yet a boy who had no wealth, no fame, no power, had succeeded where she had failed. It wasn't money or status that calmed Amelia. It was compassion. And as Vanessa gazed at Marcus, she realized something powerful. Sometimes, the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places. Vanessa stared at Marcus as though she had just witnessed something impossible. Her daughter, Amelia, was asleep, calm, peaceful, safe. The cries that had rattled her nerves and humiliated her only minutes before had vanished into silence. For the first time since the plane had taken off, Vanessa felt like she could breathe again. She adjusted the blanket around Amelia, brushing a soft curl from her daughter's forehead. The little girl stirred for a moment, then settled back into Marcus's rhythm. Though he wasn't even holding her anymore, the calm he had created still lingered, like an invisible shield around them. Vanessa swallowed hard, her voice trembling as she finally managed to speak. How did you do that?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat, shrugging as though it weren't anything remarkable. "I don't know. I've had practice, I guess." "Practice?" Vanessa asked, her brows knitting. He nodded, his eyes lowering to floor. "With my little sister. She used to cry like that all the time. My mom worked late shifts, so I had to step in. At first, I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrified I'd drop her, or that I'd never figure it out. But over time, I learned. Babies don't need much. Just warmth, steady hands, a little patience." There was a simplicity in his words, but the weight behind them was unmistakable. This wasn't just about babysitting. This was about responsibility, a kind that most 17-year-olds never had to carry. Vanessa studied him quietly. His shirt was faded, his sneakers scuffed, his backpack worn. He didn't look like the kind of young man the world applauded or rewarded. And yet, here he was, doing what not even she could manage in her moment of desperation. "You're incredible," Vanessa whispered, her voice breaking. Marcus shook his head quickly, embarrassed. "I'm not. I just did what I knew." But Vanessa leaned forward, her gaze locking on his. "No, Marcus, you don't understand. I've tried everything. I have nannies, specialists, pediatricians on call. I've read all the books, followed all the advice, but nothing worked today. And then you just walked over, and within minutes, she was asleep. That isn't ordinary. That's a gift." Her words seemed to make Marcus even more uncomfortable. He rubbed the back of his neck, glancing around as though afraid of drawing more attention. "I wasn't trying to prove anything," he said softly. "I just didn't want to see her cry anymore. Or you looked like you were about to break." Vanessa froze. No one ever said things like that to her. People called her brilliant, ruthless, unstoppable, but never vulnerable, never about to break. It was a truth she rarely admitted even to herself. And yet this boy had seen it in her within minutes. She let out a shaky laugh, wiping the corner of her eye. "You're very observant for someone your age." Marcus shrugged again, but this time his voice carried a quiet strength. "You notice things when you have to. When you grow up in a place where you can't afford to miss what's happening around you, you learn to pay attention." Vanessa tilted her head, her curiosity deepening. "Where are you from, Marcus?" He hesitated and answered honestly. "South Side, not the best part of town. My mom works double shifts at the hospital cafeteria. My dad hasn't been around for years. So it's me, my little sister, and my younger brother most nights." Vanessa's chest tightened. The picture came together in her mind. This young man, barely grown himself, carrying the weight of responsibility far greater than his age. She thought about her own life, about how she had assistants for everything, staff to handle her child when she needed rest. And yet, this boy managed without any of that. "And you're traveling alone?" she asked, glancing at his backpack. He nodded. "First time on a plane. I'm heading home. Saved up for the ticket myself. Wasn't easy." Something in Vanessa's heart shifted. She saw him not just as a teen who had calmed her baby, but as a symbol of resilience, of strength born from struggle. For a moment, she didn't feel like a billionaire, and he didn't feel like a poor kid from the South Side. They were just two people, sitting side by side on a flight, connected by an act of kindness neither of them will forget. Vanessa leaned back in her seat, still rocking Amelia gently. "Do you dream of something bigger, Marcus?" she asked softly. His eyes brightened at the question, though his answer carried both hope and hesitation. Yeah, music. I play the piano. Well, not a real one. A keyboard we bought at a thrift store. I write songs sometimes. My sister says they make her feel safe when she's scared. Vanessa's lips parted slightly. Music, rhythm, it made sense. His patience, his instinct for calming, it all connected. This boy had more than just experience. He had a heart that understood harmony, balance, and emotion in ways money couldn't buy. She smiled, her eyes glistening again. You know, Marcus. Some people spend their whole lives searching for their gift. You've already found yours. Don't ever doubt it. Marcus looked down, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Compliments weren't something he was used to receiving. He mumbled, I'm just trying to do the right thing. That's all. But Vanessa saw more. She saw potential. She saw a light in him that the world could so easily overlook. And in that quiet moment, as Amelia slept soundly against her chest, she made a silent promise. She wouldn't overlook him. The plane rattled slightly as it passed through turbulence, but neither of them moved. They sat in companionable silence, a billionaire and a teenager, strangers bound together by compassion. Vanessa reached out, touching Marcus's arm lightly. Thank you, she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of all the relief, gratitude, and humility she felt. You didn't just help her, you helped me too. Marcus looked at her, his eyes warm. Sometimes, he said gently, all someone needs is to know they're not alone. And in that moment, Vanessa Carter realized something she never expected to learn on a crowded airplane. The greatest wisdom can come from the humblest voices. The captain's voice crackled over the speakers, announcing the descent. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly in New York. Please fasten your seatbelts and prepare for arrival. The announcement jolted the cabin back to life. But something had changed. The tense, hostile energy from earlier was gone. Passengers who had once muttered angrily now sat in calm silence, sneaking glances at the boy who had turned chaos into peace. Marcus shifted in his seat, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He wasn't used to people staring at him. Growing up, he had always blended into the background, just another kid from a forgotten neighborhood. But now, here on this airplane, he was at the center of attention, though he hadn't sought it. Beside him, Vanessa cradled Amelia, who remained fast asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. Vanessa brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face, her eyes filled with a tenderness that hadn't been there earlier. Relief still flooded her, but more than that, a profound sense of gratitude pulsed in her chest. As the plane dipped lower, the golden evening light filtered to the windows, bathing the cabin in warmth. Vanessa turned to Marcus, her voice low but steady. You've given me more than a quiet flight today. You've given me perspective. Marcus blinked, unsure how to respond. I just wanted to help, he said simply. But Vanessa shook her head, her lips trembling with emotion. No, Marcus. You reminded me of something I've forgotten. That life isn't about control or money or power. It's about heart, compassion. And you showed me that in the purest way. Her words sank deep into Marcus's chest. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not teachers, not neighbors, not even family. For most of his life, he had felt invisible. And now, here was a woman whose face appeared on magazine covers, whose name carried weight in the world, looking at him as though he mattered. The seatbelt sign chimed, and the plane rattled softly as it descended. Amelia stirred slightly but didn't cry. Vanessa smiled, kissing her daughter's forehead. Then, almost as if making a decision she had already been turning over in her heart, she reached into her purse. She pulled out a sleek, embossed business card and held out to Marcus. This isn't charity, she said firmly, seeing the hesitation already forming in his eyes. It's an opportunity. Call me. I want to help with your education. I want to make sure your gift doesn't go unnoticed. You have something special, Marcus, and the world deserves to see it. Marcus froze, staring at the card. He had seen people hand out business cards before, lawyers, executives, people who live in a world so far from his own, but never had one been given to him. He glanced at Vanessa, then down at the name embossed in gold letters. Vanessa Carter, Billionaire. CO. A woman whose world seemed galaxies away from his. His voice was barely a whisper. Why me? Vanessa's eyes softened. Because you reminded me of what matters most. And because sometimes the world overlooks people like you, the ones with real talent, real heart. I don't want to overlook you. The sincerity in her tone broke through the walls Marcus had built over the years. He clutched the card carefully, as if it were made of glass. The plane touched down with a jolt, wheels screeching against the runway. A wave of applause broke out. Not the polite clapping people sometimes gave at landings, but something different. Passengers clapped for the boy who had transformed the flight. Some even smiled directly at Marcus, nodding in respect. The businessman who had complained earlier leaned across the aisle. Kid, that was impressive. Never seen anything like it. The woman from the front row added with a smile. You've got a gift, sweetheart. Don't waste it. Marcus's cheeks flushed red. He wasn't used to praise. He ducked his head, mumbling, Thank you. As the plane rolled to the gate, Vanessa adjusted Amelia in her arms and stood. She turned to Marcus one last time. Don't lose this card, she said with a smile. And don't lose who you are. Promise me that. Marcus nodded, his throat too tight for words. The passengers began filing out, dragging their luggage, hurrying toward connections. But a few lingered near the aisle, offering Marcus small smiles or pats on the shoulder as they passed. For once, he didn't feel invisible. When it was finally his turn to leave, Marcus stepped off the plane with his backpack slung over one shoulder and Vanessa's card clutched tightly in his hand. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with something new, hope. The evening air hit him as he walked through the jet bridge, and he paused for a moment, taking it all in. He had boarded this flight as just another poor teen trying to get home. But he was leaving with something more, a possibility, a glimpse of a future he had never dared to imagine. He thought of his little sister, of the way she looked at him like he was her hero. He thought of the music he scribbled on scraps of paper, of the songs he played on his thrift store keyboard late at night. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something bigger. Behind him, Vanessa adjusted her daughter, her gaze lingering on Marcus as he disappeared into the crowd. She smiled softly. She had built empires, made fortunes, and commanded power. But this moment, this connection with a boy who had nothing but heart, was more valuable than all of it. And so, the story of Flight 227 ended not with frustration or anger, but with a reminder. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change everything. Marcus walked into the terminal, the card still warm in his hand, his future unwritten but brighter than ever before. For the first time in a long time, he dared to believe